Are you doing what you should be doing, or is the grass greener on the other side? Jason Duff tells us how he figured out this for himself and how exactly you are where you need to be right now in this phase. We're going to talk a lot about business, small towns, and the thriving of them. But we're also going to talk about leadership lessons and how you can figure out your own leadership style and 3 keys to partnerships that was really impactful for me. Major takeaway is like the test to entrepreneurship and to leadership that you're going through right now, whether you're an entrepreneur or a business leader. And finally, we talked about 2 lessons from his grandpa that I wish he would have told me a long time ago that would have been really, really helpful. Check it out. Hello and welcome to the Purpose Matrix. I am very excited for today's guest, a name you are going to recognize, Mr. Jason Duff. Jason, how are you doing today?
Phil, I'm great. Happy to be here.
Thanks so much for taking your time to be on the show with us and sharing your story and all the lessons and wisdom that you've learned from a lot of years of hard work, honestly. That's what I think about. You are hustling and you are going after it. And, you know, there's a lot of people in West Central Ohio, Central Ohio that appreciate what you've done because of the experiences they get to enjoy in Bellefontaine, Ohio, but not limited to Bellefontaine, Ohio. And I'm going to talk about that here in a second. So if you don't know Jason, founder and CEO of Small Nation, nationally recognized for small town economic development. And he is going way above and beyond buying a building and you know, putting a restaurant or a coffee shop or whatever. He's going way beyond that. And we're going to talk about how he's doing that and his mindset of service to support that. If you haven't been to Bellefontaine in the last several years, you have to go check it out. There's so much to do there. It is thriving. He's been a big part of turning it around, and he's taking that model. And he's, again, I mentioned service, but he's helping so many other small communities and small towns doing it. And he just loves the vibrancy of a small town, the values, what people stand for. And just a good guy. Jason, thanks again for what you're doing, the impact you're having, not just here in Ohio, but around the nation and with people. So it didn't start this way, Jason. You weren't, you know, bring us back a little bit and just your backstory and how you got into this, you know, crazy world of what you're doing today. But bring us back a little bit and how you got where you are today.
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Appreciate being a guest on the show, and just love what you're doing of sharing messages of stories of leaders and great entrepreneurs, and also what's happening in community. So it's a really pleasure to be on today. Well, I'm 44 years old, and you know, I used to think the age of 44, anything over 40, you're like done. Like, you remember being young, and it's like, man, those milestones of. Yeah, I know, 40 years old, geez.
I'm just a couple months younger than you, but your hair looks great, Jason. I will say that.
Well,
so there
I'm
you
losing
go.
more of it every day. But no, I think back, you think to your parents and grandparents and leaders that you've had in your life. And, you know, I grew up in a small town, Huntsville, Ohio. It's in Logan County. So Logan County is about 60 miles northwest of Columbus. Huntsville was a city, or I should say not a city, a village of 400 people. We had a stoplight, a gas station. It was a part of Indian Lake Schools. So I, you know, literally could walk to school in our village because that historic building that had been there for 100 years is where I went to elementary school. And both my parents were small business owners as well. So, you know, growing up in a family business, it becomes part of your DNA the minute that you can walk. You have a duty. And you also kind of get dragged along with your parents and grandparents to the kinds of activities that they need to do to run the business. So I was absorbing, you know, a lot of that at a very young age. And then, you know, I was involved in youth sports and got involved in music. I was a band in choir and, you know, got involved in a lot of the school activities and things in our community. There were leaders that were, you know, running those things. And there are also businesses that were sponsoring, whether it was our equipment or the things that we needed, the trips that we would take. So it is kind of what I would say, that quintessential small town environment that I had the chance, because of other people sacrificing, to be nurtured and supported. But you kind of fast forward to being a young adult. If you want to really challenge your small business parents that are pretty conservative, is you tell them you're going to go to a liberal arts college and be a music major. That was an interesting conversation. First generation college student, and I'm really thankful that I had a music teacher in middle school that said, hey, you're actually pretty talented. You've got a knack for this. you may have an opportunity to get a scholarship. And college wasn't really in my conversation until I had someone, an educator in my life, really push me and encourage me to do that. Ended up going to another small town in Ada, Ohio, became a student at Ohio Northern University, and then leaving, being 60, 70 miles away from where I grew up, I was kind of disconnected for about 4 years of what was happening in Logan County. And the county seat of Logan County is Bellefontaine. And being that it was the courthouse kind of set up, the story of small towns, from the 40s and 50s, seeing the industrial might, to the 60s, 70s, 80s, the first Walmart in all of Ohio opened up in Bellefontaine. So being that my parents were small business owners, like I was hearing and seeing all these changes. But when I left for college and I came back home, it was a drastic change. The men's clothing store that had been in our community for 70 years, that when I was a young man at 13 years old, the owner taught me how to tie a tie, like important life experience. Most of the department stores, the Montgomery Wards, the G.C. Murphy's, the Stage, the Almonds, all of them closed. And it left a town that was 80% vacant. And I think that story and that journey, in a lot of places that your listeners will resonate with, they remember that was a childhood. And it really kind of shook me. And whether you say very naive or very brilliant, I came back home wanting to make a difference.
Well, it's a cool story, and first of all, it's interesting. I didn't know, by the way, Walmart first location
in Ohio, 1987, and my mom owned a Hallmark shop, and you can imagine the Hallmark years. Those were the curio cabinet collectible years, the cherished teddies, the precious moments. But when Walmart said, we're going to carry greeting cards and we're going to carry books and we're going to carry gifts.
And they're going to be $1
that was a
or whatever.
I remember my parents talking at the dinner table saying, are we going to be able to make it? And those same conversations happen amongst entrepreneurs today, whether it's Amazon or tariffs or AI. But I think instead of paralyzing you, it's like, what are we going to do to innovate? Or if we have to close down one business, how can we start up something else that's going to capture what's needed or necessary later on?
Yeah. Why do you? So I want to first of all, thanks for the backstory, and you're gonna hear from the questions I asked, the discussion we have about what's going on in Bellefontaine today, and it's a great story. But I want to talk about the small towns and the people, and why is the town? Why is the connection with the person that's going to help you tie a tie? Why is it so meaningful to you? Like, why does it matter to you so much? What is it about the people in the town or their experiences they get to have that makes you, really go through a lot to do what you do? Like, you go through a lot of pain and challenges and pressure and stress and other things. Why are you so convicted or so passionate about this?
I love that Main Street America, which is a nonprofit organization, a few years ago came up with this campaign, and that's kind of filtered down into a lot of the state Main Street programs like Heritage Ohio, is this kind of tagline that this place matters. And I think the idea of establishing the connection that we all started somewhere, we've moved and lived in different places, and we are drawn to certain businesses because there's an energy. And for me, the idea of building community starts with preserving the things that we hold dear. Sometimes that is a structure. Sometimes that's a city park. Sometimes that's a place where you worship, where you eat, where you dine. All of those kind of places, there's physical elements, but then it's the people element. Think back to, where you've had big pivots and shifts in your life and the people that were there to help you do it. Sometimes it was a coach, and I love the word mentor. Sometimes it was, maybe someone that took an interest in you and gave you the confidence that you needed to overcome something. For me, it was the nurturing of a community and certain people that stood out to me in my life that helped me realize the vulnerabilities that I felt that I had. Many of them, it was my own my own head being in my way and my own heart of maybe, you know, needing to be challenged or pushed in different ways. But it was also the foundation that I needed, when I had a decision of where I wanted to live and where I wanted to work and what I wanted to do, it was coming back here. And I do think that sometimes we think the grass is greener, and sometimes we think that, and we need this too as part of the journey. Maybe you have to go somewhere else or be with someone else or do something else to really appreciate how good and how special you have it. And I just happen to be, for Ohio in general, and for a lot of the small towns in Ohio, and particularly the region that I'm working in, I happen to believe it's the best and one of the best places to start a business, to raise a family, to incubate a new idea. And I hope that we can continue to build an ecosystem that gives the next generation of entrepreneurs and peoples and doers that same need and want to come back and do those things that I'm doing and that you're doing and others are doing today.
Yeah. And I have like 10 places to go there, so I can't go to all of them. But first of all, I think for anyone in business, anyone, not just entrepreneurs, but business leaders, managers, whatever your role is, whatever your title is, none of that really matters. You're interacting with people. And what I love that you said is like the people element, and like you rejuvenate buildings downtown. You bring a ton of horsepower behind the business owners that you bring into those. You support them in so many ways because of the connection it creates with people, is what I heard. And I don't know, I don't know if that's a formal mission statement, but like so many of us, no matter what your role is, whatever organization you're in, if you're a business leader, business owner, you work with people. And whatever you make, whatever you do is a vehicle to connect with and interact with people. And I love that, by the way, I just had this discussion previously, like you mentioned, grass is greener on the other side. I want to go to that for a second, because don't get frustrated if you're feeling that. Recognize like there's phases you have to go through, and you might have to have success or failure in the phase you're in now to figure out what the next phase is. And if you don't know it right now, that's okay. And I just had that discussion, so I think that's important. And the last thing I'll say on this is, you talked about Ohio, Midwest Ohio, Central Ohio, and talk about good people, great values. And, my kind of tagline I like for 2025, we need good people. Like you're probably you're a good, if you're listening to this, let's just assume you're good. We need good people to be great leaders, to have an impact, to have a ripple impact. And I'm going to come back to not just the work you're doing in Ohio, but how it has rippled out throughout the nation, Jason. But before I do, I want to talk about your approach to this that's very unique, in that, you're not rejuvenating, you have done it, and now you're doing it and setting up the model elsewhere. But you're buying dilapidated buildings, or you bought a lot of them, 60 plus. You've rejuvenated them, and then you've really gotten behind the business owners, the entrepreneurs. Tell me about the model a little bit and why it has worked so well.
So
with the lessons that are there too, of course, with lessons in there to figure this out.
Sure. Small Nation invest in places, spaces, and dreams for small towns. And really the foundation of that business model was the feelings and emotions that I had when I first started out, some of the challenges and roadblocks that I was running into. How do you get access to capital? How do you buy a building and then, find tenants? And then how do you navigate building codes and rules and get the public support around your project and the things you want to accomplish and do? And all of these things, like, it's really beautiful to see a rendering and the potential of what something can happen. But the hundreds and thousands of micro decisions that are necessary to get that dream to be a reality, I'm just going to be honest, it is very, very hard work. And then secondly, the thing that really was surprising to me is how lonely it is. I was really trying to seek out and find other people that were doing what I was doing in small towns, and I was frustrated because there wasn't a playbook, there wasn't great resources, and so part of the experimentation of rebuilding downtown Bellefontaine was, what can we do to pioneer certain ideas of bringing sit-down dining restaurants back to a town that 80% of the downtown was vacant and empty? How do we storytell the great history that the town had, but give them strategies around innovation for the new types of models that we were seeing in places like Chicago or places like Columbus and even bigger cities, let's say New York or Miami or LA, like those big city amenities. How could we find and work with folks to create models for those in a small market? And so I love the term incremental development, and there is a whole movement amongst planning and development and real estate around thinking about one section of town, thinking of one part of a neighborhood, and what are those anchors and those complementary businesses and the things that you desire to have. It's not going to happen all at the same time, but incrementally, how can you start to build your dream ecosystem? And I know Legos are super hot again, which as an 80s kid makes me very happy. But that Legos is one of the things that always brought me a lot of joy. And really, I kind of look at historic downtowns and neighborhoods as you've got all these building blocks and these pieces. How do we put them together? And at the end of the day, you do need the dirt, you do need the structures, you do need the capital. But I like to find the people, someone that has a unique ability that's 99% better than anyone else out there. And they may not even know what their superpower is. And part of what I think my unique ability is I'm good at interviewing, getting to know people, finding their weird, their passion, their excitement. And then I'm going to try to share what it would be like if they could work in that passion the majority of their day, the majority of their life, doing meaningfully good things that's going to positively impact their community. And if I can find that and get them in the right building, the right model, with the right resources, what leads to that is money and wealth. And so it's actually a little bit counterintuitive. It's like a lot of people are drawn into this industry to make the money and wealth, and there is nothing wrong with that. If that is what gets you into the industry, because money and wealth is a tool and a resource.
Right.
But if we flip back and focus on finding the entrepreneurs and resourcing them first, and then the wealth comes, it is like that is like bringing joy and purpose, along with giving you more gunpowder and resources to do even more great things.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, that money and wealth are tools. And honestly, if you start it for that reason, but you have success, but you're not passionate about it, it's probably going to be empty. Whereas if you start it for that reason, but you're really passionate about what you're doing, then that's just becomes a tool and fuel for the fire, I think, so much. What I liked about what you said too, is that what I heard you say indirectly maybe is like your superpower is finding other people's, not necessarily their superpower, a little bit, but really their passion. And if someone is really passionate about something, whether it's a superpower or not right now, it will become that if they want to do it for the right reason. And there will be pain and struggle and challenges that they'll go through to figure out how, but they'll get there. And the other thing is, just the book, Who Not How, is like so much of our role as business owners and business leaders is really that. Like, you're looking for buildings, you're looking for opportunities, you're trying to strategize and build out the Lego blocks, but it's really who is that you're focused on the who, not the how, I think. And if you want to add to that, feel free to do so. But also I want to jump to, I suspect from building number one to now, your role in what you do has changed perhaps dramatically. And I want to hear about kind of that transformation and how you focus on it now. If you want to jump back to the who, not how discussion too, feel free to do that.
So in the real estate industry, you hear that the goal is to be a passive investor and develop passive income. I've been doing this probably now for 20 years. And the day my day usually starts about 6:30 in the morning, and I usually work till 6 or 7 o'clock at night, and usually a half day on Saturday. Now, I know some of your listeners are saying that sounds like a prison, but if I explain to them that my joy is in the work that I do, I get a lot of purpose. I grew up around people that was a normal week in a normal environment. And I, in my heart, am an operator. I love to work with my entrepreneurs to get in the weeds, to understand how do we need to clean this grease trap out? How do we need to design a procedure around that? How do we design the menu so that's most effective, that customers will enjoy experiencing and trying new things in your business? And then I'll, work with them to understand the reviews and help them support for how they're gaining reviews, and is their Google My Business profile optimized? I am tweaking from very early in the morning till the end of the day with my tenants, with my team members, because it is hand-to-hand combat in helping a small town business win. It's also working to keep me sharp, so I'm not getting so far away of not understanding the deep issues in one industry of how that could impact another. And so I'd say the secret sauce that we have at Small Nation, and what I try to build in the values of my team, is our grit, is our hustle, is our drive, and also our ability to step into any situation to help someone when they need a 911 plan. And I'll share that my day, the rhythms of my day, and I think my team would describe me, I'm extremely hands-on. I like the details. I like to be in the know, but I've also been forced to develop and trust and build other people like me so that I can toss a ball to them and they can run with it. And I don't need to know the granular details of some of those things. So it is kind of, you have to reflect as a leader. And I think what I've observed about myself, and part of it comes from how I started with one building and one restaurant and one thing, to growing up to 66 and now multiple communities. And we're now coaching and mentoring, other investors and mayors and economic development professionals around the state and around the country. It just is who I am. It's the DNA of the lenses that you have. And then you don't want to be in the middling many doing what everyone else does. So it's like, if we can show those case studies and those examples, and I can go in and connect with a restaurateur, understanding their equipment, understanding their business model, because I've been in the trenches doing it.
Yep. No, I love that. And I want to ask a question. So first of all, I think the term passive investor as I think there can be opportunities to passively invest. I think if you figure out how to do that, you're going to end up finding a passion somewhere and doing something. Like if you can figure out that, I don't know, honestly, I don't like the term that much. Like, yes, people can passively invest, but don't be passive. Like, don't. I mean, if you're listening to this,
I like to meet and learn from other people, and there are, I wonder how many of the infomercials, and they drew me in the beginning. How I learned about real estate was watching those late night television shows. I'm
supposed to be on the beach right now. That's where we're supposed to be.
And they bought the system. Yeah, they bought the system. Okay. So, and I was one of those people. I paid and spent a lot of money around gurus, and truthfully, have I benefited from it? Yes, I have.
Right.
Like, maybe it was a mind shift, or maybe it got me thinking differently. It drew me to grab my interest. So I encourage everyone, do it. Robert Kiyosaki and the Rich Dad, Poor Dad books were a great way to get started.
Fantastic.
But then let's get to the reality of it. The reality of it is you can't hire a manager or, a property manager or a manager of your restaurant, and you just decide you're going to show up maybe once or twice a week just to check in how things are going. It is, in the reality of small business and small town investors, that does not exist. So if you can figure out, are you better at marketing than most people? Are you good at fixing water heaters and plumbing problems? Are you, do you have a unique skill in coaching, training, and mentoring? Find out what it is that you're good at. For me, my blind spot is I really struggled with accounting and finance. Through college, I just didn't excel in math. And coming out, even though I heard terms and understood terms of income statement and balance sheet, but when it got down to the brass tacks of the bank, me needing to get a loan, and they started using all these new terms like debt service coverage ratio. They started using all these things.
I love that term, Jason. I love DSCR.
We could do a whole podcast on that one, couldn't we, Phil?
Yeah, it's important, by the way. It's really important.
So here's the end. As I said, I'm not good at this. I will be self-aware that I will be the slowest person trying to do my bookkeeping, and I'll probably mess it all up. I'm going to find the best person that gets up every day, that loves me giving them a stack of receipts and papers and income, and figure it out.
Yeah. And I think I was going to say this earlier, and there's a couple of things that you said that bring this to kind of highlights this, is that as leaders, we need to understand both our style and what makes us click, because I think so many different books, or maybe I've done this on this show, is we try to put leaders in a bucket of this is what you have to do and this is how you have to do it. And I think that can be a dangerous thing, because I think there's passion, but there's skills and what you're good at and what you like to do. And I think the biggest term you said is self-awareness. Understand what you're talented at, what you're good at, and what you're not good at, right? Let's talk numbers, Jason. I love it, right? But know what you're good at. But marketing, you're really good at marketing. I'm not, right? So I know what you're good at, what your skills are, what your talents are, and then hire people around you to support what you're not good at. And even how engaged you are or not, figure out your leadership style and your approach that works best for you. Because if you're trying to do something that you're not, it's not good for your team either, I don't think. So you talked about grit, hustle, drive, your work ethic. You guys are you're working hard, you're having a big impact, but it's hard work, right? It's not just hard work for you. It's hard work for your team. How do you keep your team engaged, motivated, grit, hustle? You can say that, but there's got to be more behind it for that to be sustainable, right? How do you go about doing that?
I think you have to establish rhythms, and part of our rhythm was getting certain touch bases set up and established. So I love the daily huddle call at 8:15 a.m. I think probably on to year 24 or 25 that I've done these, is that the senior leaders of our team jump on for 15 minutes sharing on a conference call line, using freeconferencecall.com. And I still can't believe it's free, but they still allow me to use it.
I used to use it. It's still there.
It's still there. They still operate. But we do that sharing 3 big things that we've accomplished or worked on for the previous day, and maybe identifying one area we need help or advice as we head into the morning. And why I like that is it prepares everyone coming into the day to think about what are those big things that move the needle that we've accomplished, and then what's one area I maybe need to get advice from the group as we advance that. The next thing that I believe in is we do a daily touch base real estate team meeting, talking about what we can be better doing to support our tenant success, company goals, available properties, things that are trending from a legislative standpoint, local community news standpoint. That's an hour meeting that we're unpacking things. I love that, use that term unpacking. How do we solve this problem? How can we throw balls and delegate things to other team members? And what are things that we need to know to be successful for the day? And utilizing Zoom or Teams, it gives us an AI recap with the delegated items that we can send out to the real estate team listserv so they know what's going on. And what's neat within our company is a lot of these other meetings are happening. And as a leader, I can choose to participate in getting those AI recaps or not, to help kind of shape where we're going strategically as a direction. So I say the rhythms are a big piece of it. The other thing is providing inspiration, and then also giving people space to test, to learn, and also to recharge. And I'm kind of big about that. Even though we work really, really hard, a lot of my team is focused on education and personal development. We operate and have one of our tenants is a fitness facility. So really getting people plugged in if they're passionate about CrossFit, let's really burn off some of that extra energy or stress amongst working out. The other thing is how do we be able to do insight trips and visit people that are doing best practices in what they're doing, and how can we glean from that, but also then celebrate. Sometimes you leave someone that's doing a best practice and you think, wow, we've actually developed something that's pretty special and unique. Let's give a shout out and attaboys and pat on the back of what the good things that we're doing. And then the recharge thing is everyone has a different way that they need to recharge. If that is taking some vacation time, or if that, and really what we try to do is have systems and delegate enough that someone needs that clear space that they can actually be able to do that. So I think it's, really identifying people that want to learn, like to hustle, like to burn hard. But also, I have made the mistake, and I fully understand the cost of entrepreneurship. In fact, on my Small Nation podcast, one of the episodes that was the most viewed was by Matt Brown, and Matt served as our property manager for many years, and then he took the courage to step out and start Iron City Sports Bar. And he talks about what it was like to start up a restaurant in an old Ponderosa, with his wife and family. He had 3 boys, and the highs and the lows of struggling with the stress, losing key employees, breaking down of business partnerships, struggling with alcohol and addiction. And in hearing all of that, what I realize is that this is more common than not. Entrepreneurship is not the path for everyone. Happens to be that I love it, but I also recognize there are costs to it. And I think that's the other side of unpacking your journey, is there are moments where you need to take a step back and recharge and retool to build your business or your company or your organization so that it is sustainable and strong and healthy. And there are points I have burnt people out. And I have learned from that, because the drive for success, the drive for accomplishment, that air to breathe, to continue to get to the next step, there are costs and sacrifices. And that has been a big learning over the years of how the next iterations we can do better, I can do better.
Yeah, I love that. And I love I think what's standing out to me from the discussion thus far, Jason, is just self-awareness and the building of your self-awareness over the course of time through, not just what you've done with, I'll say, buildings. And really, it's not even about that. It's what you've done, and the impact you're having, but with leadership, with your style, what works for you, what works for your team. I love the rhythms, by the way. I think every business, every team, you need to have your rhythm, your connections, your touch points. We have a different method, but a lot of the same things, right? So figure out your rhythm, what works for you. You got to have purpose and inspiration, and the recharge thing, I think is really important in the story about, like, as entrepreneurs, we're hard driving, we're on a mission, we're trying to do things. And I think we try to inspire and create that amongst our teams, but we also have to have not just self-awareness, but the hardest, I think even harder, is probably the awareness of our team members' self-awareness. What makes them click? Are they hard driving? Are they not? Like, when do they need a recharge? What rhythms work for the team? And you can't completely cater to people, but the more you just understand people, the stronger leader I think you'll be. By the way, the best way to understand people the best, including your team members, I think, is to build your own self-awareness, which, I think through all the people you've talked to, all the books that you've read, and just by going and doing it, right? I think you've built that in a great way. So I just appreciate that whole segment. That was really, really impactful. You're doing this, and there's also, I want to talk about, small town, we talked about that, but there's also like family business. And I can really relate to growing up in an entrepreneurial household. And, my sister tells the story that when I was like really, really little, so like, I don't remember 83, 84, 85. I was like 1, 2, 3, 4 years old, but the business was in our house. Right. And so it was being ingrained in me, but I didn't even know it at the time, right? Whereas my older sister remembers those discussions. I don't really remember them as much because the business had moved out of the house, but I can resonate with entrepreneurship kind of being in the blood. And for you, not just did you grow up with it, was it in your blood? Both parents being entrepreneurs themselves, but also there's some family business that you've been working. I'll say it's just been a part of what you've done, right? So tell me more about that dynamic and how it's impacted what you're doing and your approach to that.
It is kind of a brother and sisterhood when you meet other people that grew up in a family business. And there's usually this like nod or this smirk or like, oh my gosh, you survived. All of those kind of things. For me, the foundational watching and having other people I could look up to and seeing how they communicate, how they lead, how they talk. That was really, really helpful. But I've also seen the dark sides of inequalities, what, different family members believe that your jobs or duties should be, or how hard that you work, or what benefits you get to the owners or the thought leaders or the patriarch or matriarchs. It's just tough. Transitions, I think that's the word, is transitions are never easy. But what I've learned is I've gotten better at communicating, not only communicating the why of how we do something or the way, helping, chart forward so everyone within the family business can kind of have their role and their duty amongst shared governance of where we want to chart forward or what we want to do. But it's messy, it's hard, and especially when you just start out with very, very small companies. And if the first generation did a really good job, maybe that small company moves to a mid-sized company, or maybe you start to have multiple locations, and then you move on to third generations, which now you've got partnerships with not only brothers and sisters, but potentially cousins. And just knowing who we are as nature, I remember two things that one of my mentors, who was my grandfather, said. There's two things in business he just didn't recommend. And one was you should never own a bar or restaurant. And number two, you should never have business partners. And he would be laughing today because I have broken those two cardinal rules. But I think where he would be proud is that now I have 8 or 9 business partners that I work with in different projects. Many of them are some of my original employees that I'm excited to partner up with so they can build their empires and do even greater things. But my learning lesson in both of those is you can win in those industries and you can win with those partnerships, but you've got to find the right values, the right complements, the right structure, and then you have to increase and design ways that you communicate as effectively as possible. You may not agree on everything. You may have different reasons for why you want to agree. You may have different stories or narratives coming into a situation. But the more understanding that you can get and the better ways that you can communicate to explain and actually probably the number one quality is, and I like speed. I like to get things done. I'm kind of that person that I'm a quick start, meaning I take in information pretty quickly and I can deduce a decision. I have reflected that that's not how everyone else is or should be. So I appreciate people that come in and maybe my business partner presents a contrarian opinion about why we're doing something. And I'll do a better job, and I've had to practice at this actually, of asking better questions and doing more active listening before I get to the decision. And I think if you speak to my business partners and ask them to really look at me authentically, they would say, we rely on Jason to help us when we're stuck with something of making a decision. We'll rely on his ability to take in that information and give us some confidence with the direction that we're going. And so I think just highlighting with family business where I see some of the opportunities is really you have people back to back with you that are building something and working on a much larger level to impact a region, a state, your blood. And you've got a shared story and love for each other. But where the breakdowns happen is the feelings. It's more feelings and emotions around inequalities and access to lead and to govern or to use your gifts in the larger overall enterprise. And there's thousands of books about it. It is a complex, situation. But I think if people know much about my family, has it been perfect that we've all got along? No, it is not. But are we darn proud in the 50 years of how we've shaped the region with construction materials and with the things happening in West Central Ohio, I am really proud of what the family's done. But at some point, I needed to go out to chart my own way and my own adventure with building my own company too.
Yeah, I love that. And first of all, I could have used some advice from your grandpa, Jason. I appreciate that because I've tried both. I will say that regarding partnerships, I've had good partnerships and not so good partnerships, but I've learned from all those. And I think, as a business owner, if you're thinking about starting a business or if you think you're entrepreneurial blooded and you just haven't pulled the trigger yet, partnerships are absolutely fantastic if done right. And I think, by the way, that doesn't mean you're going to get it right the first time every single time either. But sometimes you got to take the leap. But I think the more first of all, alignment on values is so critical. You said that, and I couldn't agree more with that. Like if you're going to a partnership where you don't think you're aligned on values, like let's just stop it right there, right? You have to complement each other. So if you're two of the exact same people with the exact same skill sets, then you're probably not bringing two different things. And then understanding how to structure it is the third thing you said. And you just ripped that off, but I think you've thought about that before because those are absolutely fantastic to support, thinking through if I want to start a business or start a partnership, how I should think about it. And the way to get to that is really just good communication and great questions. As you said, it looked like you might want to add something there.
Well, I'll just say I will double down. I am so happy. What's taken our business and 10x'd it is by going down the journey to find business partners. And the greatest joys and some of my deepest, it's like an extended family, are people that have had a shared experience with me to build something even greater. And probably the biggest joy that I get is seeing business partners that took a risk on me that we started together really accomplish and hit their goals. And I love, one of the first tenants was a pizzeria that opened up in one of our buildings in the downtown. And Brittany Saxton is the owner of 600 downtown. She's 35 years old, mom of 3 kids. She made pizza. She started washing dishes when she was 14, became a line cook, a pizza chef, an assistant manager. She is now the owner of 600 downtown. And I use her as an example because we partnered up in the beginning. It was very vulnerable to see a new restaurant open up, especially when 13 other pizza places were in downtown Bellefontaine. But I share with others, especially to young people that are motivated by money, I point to Brittany and her example. She's a millionaire and more than that. Like she's building her empire and doing so much good of giving back in our community. She has over 40 employees in her business. She has, made this ripple impact that has inspired so many other people to take that risk. But we just partnered up on buying a historic church and renovating as a new wedding and event venue. And I couldn't have financially even saw all these ripple impacts that I couldn't do by myself and alone. But now that I have all these partners, we're just, aligning and growing and building something so much bigger than we could have ever imagined was possible.
Once you figure it out too, because it wasn't just figured out of the gate either. I think that's so good. And I think, you said partnerships can be such an accelerator and like for sure out of the gate, but then you might take some steps back in the process. But if you figure it out, the compounding of that, the ripple of that, I think can be so powerful. And then just the friendships you create, the fulfillment. I mean, that's a great story and a great example of how you can get that out of it. And I think that's what they can be. I think partnerships get a really bad name, but I think just they can be such an enabler to not just success, but impact. And I like that so much. And you talked about, you referenced, people that, maybe younger person listen might be motivated by money. We talked about phases earlier, like phases, and you're probably going to graduate from that at some point, but maybe you are starting there. Tell me a little bit about like money, wealth building, kind of your philosophy around that a little bit.
It's a tool, and you can exchange the word money and time and energy. And I think for me, I always constantly felt that someday everything was going to go away and I couldn't survive on my own. And so I have a little bit of head trash around, especially being in the family business, thinking at some point maybe I would be cut out of that or not have a career or not have a job. And that that kryptonite or that fear and that anxiety of being abandoned really forced me to be extremely and fiercely independent. That has played out in my professional life. It's also played out in my personal life. And I've actually had to really work hard to unpack and figure that out on my own. But I would say where I'm at now, it's like once you have tools and resources, you have employees, you have a team, I am probably more, my risk profile when I first started out, I was young, I didn't know what I was doing, but I had nothing to lose. But now
Banks didn't like that, especially if you didn't know what DSCR was, Jason, right? But now,
I did.
Sorry,
and they schooled me on that. They schooled me on that. And here's the thing, I needed that. I needed that. Right. Sometimes you need, I think God and the universe, like sometimes we get those really harsh lessons that we're like, wow. Like, and you may like, why is this happening to me? But we need that sometimes to happen to us. And so the flip side of where I would say I'm at today is I'm a little more risk aversion, more risk averse than probably I've ever been, because I've worked really hard to earn what I've earned. So I'm not as trusting. I trust but verify with a lot of the relationships and things I do. The second thing is I'm very much protective of my energy and where and whom I commit to time. I am probably, if people that know me have said that I'm extremely giving until I feel like I'm being taken advantage of. And so I will go above and beyond when I get the reach outs. Hey, can I pick your brain? Can I grab coffee? I'll usually accept yes, but my secret is I'll ask them to read a book or check out an article or listen to a podcast and then reach back out to let me know if that helped them and what they learned. Do you know what's interesting about
I want to start doing that, by the way. I like that a lot. It's like
80% of those pings and dings. Here's the lesson. 80% of those pings and dings that you get through Facebook message, text message, and again, at some point it's overwhelming to protect your energy. I probably say that 80%, only 20% will do the hard work. Now, here's my rule with it, and I'm sharing the secret. If you're willing to do that hard work, I will remove any gatekeeper and I will spend unlimited amounts of time as long as you are willing to put the time in to do the work to advance what you want to do, where you want to, what you want to lease, what you want to operate. But I would just say you have to protect your energy because especially today, and this is more of a message globally to the leaders that are listening, as we're losing our newspapers, as we're losing a lot of the traditional functions, there is a movement to attack people that are just the public face. And I call them Facebook terrorists. You can call whatever it was. Like there is this kind of movement that, that let's tear down the person that's doing just because we have a frustration and anger and we don't know how to channel that to make a change in our life or in our community. So a lot of my focus is what can we be doing to better resource leaders to have the courage, the emotional power, the energy to continue to do tough things and bold things because it's very much worth doing. And we need more people that will run for public office. We need more people that will take time to lead their kids' basketball team and all those kind of things that make community. But now more than ever, leadership is lonely and there is a vacuum for it. So now, am I excited about it? Yes, because I think there are examples just like this podcast and many of the guests that you had on, lean on those people, but also find ways to compliment them. Send them a note. How many times, Phil, do people call you up? Think of your tenants, your customers, just people in general. Thank you for what you do. It's probably very few compared to the pings and dings of all the things that they think you're not doing that you should be doing. And my reminder is take time to show that compassion, that gratitude, and let's help keep resourcing people to do good things and then deduce those skills down to your next generation of people that want to invest and live in a great community and keep that community strong and growing.
Yep. I love that. And we got to wrap it up here, but I love to first of all, I think courage is so important. The sign on my wall here, I'm pointing to it here, but the man in the arena. And it's not the critic that counts. It's the man that's actually in the arena. And it's so true. And I think for entrepreneurs and leaders, you need to be in the arena. And I think you need to, like, it can be lonely, but you have to embrace it. Like, you have to say, I am getting better and I am learning from this and I'm going to have an impact on it. You got to know why you're doing what you're doing. And I think, like, I had an earlier summary of like self-awareness, but I'm going to change it to, like, my big takeaway is, like, I love entrepreneurship and leadership so much because it's such a test of us. Like, you talked about, I forget the word you said, but like the messiness in your head or whatever. Like, we all have that. Like, we all have it. Everyone has it. Entrepreneurs or not. Like, if you have it, of course you do. But I think entrepreneurship and leadership brings us on this journey where we keep getting tested and we keep getting tested and we keep getting tested. And it's just this amazing journey of self-development that we're on. And we're just growing so much and we're becoming the best version of ourselves. So keep doing, like, you have to have the courage to keep going. I love it so much. And it's really the big takeaway is you just talk so much about the growth of your self-awareness and the growth of you and becoming the best version of yourself through your whole story. So I love it so much. And I appreciate just this discussion, taking the time. You're busy, you're hustling, you say no to a lot. And by the way, you didn't give me that test, so I do appreciate that. I hope I would have passed it. I do like that methodology. Jason, you're not hard to find. Everyone already probably knows who you are and how to do that. But where specifically do you want to direct people? How can they find out more about you and what you're doing?
The best thing you can do is, if you want to see a living learning lab of entrepreneurship, with food, beverage, coffee, things to do like duck pin bowling, like, come see and learn the story at downtown Bellefontaine and meet some of our business owners, check out some of the buildings, eat in the restaurants. What turned out to be an experiment.
Neat. I think you have to check it out. Like, you really do. And if you don't know the story, if you don't know about, like, it's very unique. And I'm grateful and hopeful that more and more small towns keep the momentum that a lot of them have going towards what Bellefontaine has done. Because, like, I mean, there's an awesome coffee shop, awesome restaurants that have been on like major media, just so many different things that have happened down there. So anyway, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Please come check us out.
Wanna...
And then bring your phones, take pictures. What I hope, come hang out in our co-working facility. What I hope that people can do is, like, get ideas and inspiration to take it back home. We, a lot of the secret sauce is what we called R&D. It is rip and duplicate. Just find the rip and duplicate, find the authentic version for your town and make it better. And our website is just smallnation.com. All of the social handles, from Facebook to Instagram to even TikTok. I'm advancing in my TikTok skills right now.
Oh gosh, I gotta work on that.
Yeah, but we did just hit the 100th episode on our Small Nation podcast, which really excited to hit that goal, and it's a lot of work. So I appreciate, Phil, you in this content and the way you've asked questions today have just been stellar. Appreciate you, and not only friendship-wise, but just what you're doing to make a positive impact in our community, not only here, but all around the world. So, it's a pleasure today.
Well, I appreciate, Jason, you make it pretty easy. A lot of not only self-awareness and business leadership, but also you've done the speaking thing a time or two as well. So you're obviously a natural. So I appreciate so much what you're doing. Definitely check out Bellefontaine, check out Small Nation online, bring your phone, take pictures, share with people, get the message out more. Jason, I appreciate it so much. For the Purpose Matrix, signing off.